Chapter 18. Mother. Diane Ricci hadn't stopped moving since her daughter had walked out. She'd alternated between pacing, cleaning, and reorganizing whatever she could find. She'd turned on the news, then turned it off again when the cycle only showed the outside of the building. When Niccolo came home, she all but collapsed in her husband's arms. "You're okay?" she asked. "I'm okay." He kissed the top of her head and stroked her back. "Sana bought me time to get myself and everyone else out. I'm okay." "Sana?" Prince Snow blocked me off when I tried to help her. Cops showed up before I could try and get back in. They got my statement and sent me home before I could think of a good enough excuse to stay. She was intact last I saw. The reassurance was enough to get Diane through her husband's health check, barely even scratched, but lost its shine as first 1 hour wore on, then 2. "Where is she?" "I'm sure she's fine," Nico said, calm in the way he got when anxiety was eating him from the inside out. He'd taken up a post sitting on the couch while Diane paced. "Our girl's a tough little cookie, sneaky enough to get past you when you were watching for her escape. She won't let Prince Snow get the drop on her." "I let her go." "Di?" "I let her go!" She rounded on him in fearful anger. "She asked me to let her save you, and I did, and now she's missing, and I don't know what to do." "Come here." And she was in his arms again. His functional hand ran through her hair, and her ear rested above his heart. "I put her in danger," she whispered. "You let her save my life." "She's your daughter." "And yours. That's why I have faith in her." They stayed cuddled on the couch until the door opened. Sana's voice rang through the kitchen entryway, and Diane felt the years of life she'd lost since she'd left come rushing back all at once. As soon as Nico's grip slackened, she rushed to Sana's side. Her girl was paler and dirtier than she'd been before her escape, and she'd lost her pants somewhere in exchange for a pair of loose knee-length shorts. Despite that, she was blithe and blasé as she spoke about deadly races and talking raccoons. Diane could feel the blood drain from her face the longer Sana talked. This was the kind of insanity she was expected to let a 15-year-old deal with? No way, no how. The bad feeling intensified when Sana blew off her desire to make sure she was intact in favor of opening the package she'd brought in with her. The instant the box opened to reveal more cash than Diane had seen in her lifetime, she'd nearly been sick. Sana's joke snapped her out of it enough to initiate a tally of what was there and check for forgery. When the sum came back and her cursory check indicated the money was real, Diane didn't know whether to feel better or worse. The next layer in the package solidified the idea that she should feel worse. She kept a brave face for Sana's sake, but it was difficult. The glass-making materials were a deeply personal thing to send, even if anyone who knew Sana would be able to figure out she would like them. She stepped back to let Nico deal with unboxing all of it, just in case something unsavory was stashed between the patinas and the solder. Nothing exploded, so Diane kept her mouth shut when Sana started to open the last box. When she pulled out the supersuit, Diane froze in horror. Sana's face went blank as she said what Diane was thinking. After that statement, Niccolo plucked the suit from Sana's hands, and Diane swept her into the living room. Enough was enough for one day, and from Sana's expression, she'd hit that limit. Diane had too. "Sit." She manhandled her daughter onto the sofa and tapped her sternum. "Shirt off. I want to make sure you didn't break something. Lose the shoes and socks, too." She put up a token protest even as she removed the requested articles of clothing. Diane watched her movement and found no indications of pain or impaired range. She did dissolve her shoes and tow her socks off instead of leaning over, so broken ribs were still a concern. Once the shirt was off and the loose spots were stowed as a scarf in what had to be a construct shoulder bag, Diane ran a hand down Sana's sides, applying gentle pressure while having Sana take deep breaths. Nothing unusual happened, and the same thing occurred when she checked her front and back. All her vitals were fine. She had some bruises that were going to look nasty, but was otherwise perfectly okay. "Which leg got shredded?" she demanded. Sana lifted one and plunked it on the coffee table. Diane gave it a thorough examination, but it seemed totally normal. There weren't even scars. "Any pain?" "No." She pointed, flexed, and rolled her foot. "It was in bad shape before Faye fixed it, but it's like nothing happened now. Powers like that are crazy." "What's Faye's power like? You won't get that strong, right?" Diane both hoped she would and hoped she wouldn't. On one hand, a stronger weapon meant Sana could defend herself more effectively. On the other, the stronger she got, the more risks she would take, and the bigger a target she would make. Sana waved her hand dismissively. Nah, healing and manipulation all in one? I saw Faye rearranging entire swaths of the park on a whim. My legs should be useless. They shut Prince Snow up with a word. Faye as a superpower is on a whole different level from Swarm as a superweapon. I'd ask if that'll dissuade you from fighting the others, but we both know the answer to that. Hey, you gave me permission. I did. She couldn't say she regretted it in good conscience, not with her husband and daughter both safe and with her. You got very lucky. Let me see your other leg. If Sana had gotten out of that mess without popping at least one stitch, Diane would be impressed. She was not. The stitch job had given up the ghost under Sana's athletics and would need to be almost completely redone. Or it would, if not for how the threads were surrounding a cut too far along in the healing process to need them. The stitches wouldn't have been taken out if they'd stayed intact, but she couldn't justify putting new ones in. How's this leg feeling? Pretty okay. Sana pointed and flexed that foot, though not as far as the first time she'd done so. It hurts a little when I push it, but it's fine for normal movement. Her brow furrowed. That shouldn't be happening, right? The cut should hurt worse. It may be a side effect of Faye's mojo. If a bit of healing whatever got left behind, it makes sense it'd go for the worst of your remaining injuries. I'll want to see your arm after I take these out. You got it, boss. They went quiet again while Diane snipped and pulled the threads out of Sana's leg. Sana winced whenever a thread caught, but refused the offered painkillers. Not worth it, she explained. Diane didn't question her. She knew her daughter got it from Nico. Her arm stitches were still intact, and the cut there was in the same state as the one on her leg. I can take these out in a couple of days. Faye was liberal with the patch job. Nice. Sana took her arm back and rolled her shoulder a few times. Can I grab an ice pack and go lie down now? My back is killing me. The bruises there had bloomed ugly. They were also further along than Diane had expected, but that meant Sana would be feeling the tenderness more acutely. Go ahead. I'll call you when it's time for dinner. What time even is it? Nap time for baby superweapons. So decrees Dr. Mom. Prince Snow knocked me out earlier. I'm not tired. He knocked you out? Why didn't you say so? She caught Sana's face between her hands and looked at her pupils. You could have a concussion. That's important for me to know, Sana. I taught you better than to hide that from me. Mom, stop! Sana squirmed free and scooted to the far end of the couch. I told you, he didn't hit me over the head. He drugged me. I feel fine now. Diane reminded herself that Sana meant well. She also wished she had a kit to get a blood sample. She'd stock up. You don't know what he hit you with. There could be long-term side effects. Tranquilizers like that are no joke. It didn't get me all the way. He had to... She wrapped a hand around her own neck, thumb over one carotid, and the side of her index finger over the other. Diane felt the urge to throw up at the resulting mental image. I woke up disoriented, but okay. He didn't even unmask me. I told you about it already, remember? Before the package fiasco. I was a little distracted by the story about the nearly severed limb. You will report any unusual feelings over the next few days, understand? It was a threat, not an order. Roger. So does this mean you want me awake? For the next few hours, at least. That said, you're not going to be doing anything strenuous until tomorrow morning at the earliest. I suggest finding a mindless cartoon or 3 and getting comfortable. Aren't I grounded? She was a good kid. You saved your father's life and foiled a supervillain's plot. Your grounding is suspended until further notice this once. Okay, I have a couple things in my queue that'll work. Will you or Dad come watch with me? Diane recognized that tone and was powerless in the face of it. Her family's vulnerability was her weakness. Get set up and I'll be right there. Or do you need me to stay with you? Sana shook her head. That was a good sign. She only got abnormally clingy when on the verge of a full-on breakdown. I'll pick something good. Be quick. I'll bring peanuts. She perked up and trotted over to the TV. Once she was good and distracted, Diane slipped away to find her husband. Nico had taken the suit and set up shop in their bedroom. He was scratching at one of the suit's plates with a knife. Diane waited until he was aware of her presence before saying, I'm going to keep Sana company for a bit. Are you all right up here? Yep. I'm just going to figure out what this thing is made of. It'll take a while. Let me know when it's time for dinner. I should be done by then. All right. Thanks, Nico. She grabbed her laptop and headed down. In the living room, Sana was curled up in a loose fetal position on the couch, head propped on a pillow. Bread had clearly tried to perch on top of her, but failed. Instead, he was tucked under her arm and using her wrist as a pillow, playing the little spoon. From how his eyes were shut and his body was going boneless, he was content with the arrangement. Garlic was there too, though she wasn't the type to engage in something so debasing as cuddling. She'd elected to perch on the back of the couch and nap there. Diane put the bowl of peanuts within Sana's reach and sat on the far end of the couch. One glance at the TV made her grimace. Really, Sana? Doctor Who? Tom Baker is a gem, she huffed without heat, and it's a nice long show I don't have to think about too hard. Your other choices were Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, or the original Star Trek. When she put it like that, I don't understand how you're not sick of this show. By the time I've gotten all the way through, it's been long enough that the old episodes are fresh again. Diane couldn't argue with that logic. She sat on the far end of the couch and made no protests when Sana stretched to put her feet in her lap. Diane rested one hand on her calf and opened her laptop. If she was going to be here for the next few hours, she could at least get some work done. The hours ticked by until it was time for Diane to get started on dinner. You good if I go make food? Mm-hmm. What's for dinner? Gnocchi with garlic oil, Caesar salad, garlic bread. Yum! I'll set the table once the episode's over. That would be in about 5 minutes. Sounds good. Thanks, Sana. Welcome. Once Diane grabbed Nico and the necessary ingredients, dinner got underway. She and Nico traded small talk until Sana came in to grab plates and utensils. It was only after she'd left that they got down to business. What did you learn about the suit? Diane asked under the rumble of the boiling water and the steady chop of the knife. Nico stopped cutting and tapped a finger on the counter. It's made of good material. Kevlar base, and the plates are bulletproof armor, though lighter than the types I'm familiar with. I can't know the level without testing to destruction, but I expect it's level 3 or 4. In layman's terms, it's gonna be real stinking hard to shoot, stab, or otherwise perforate her while she's suited up. There's a pair of goggles that are too small for me to wear but should hide her eyes, as well as some sort of air filter system that snaps into the helmet. Whoever sent the suit wants Sana protected. I want Sana protected. Giving her a uniform for vigilantism is the last thing I'd do. You weren't happy when I started teaching her self-defense. I'm pretty sure the gift was intended in a similar spirit. She remembered that. Sana had claimed it would be good father-daughter bonding, and Nico had come up with several convincing sources regarding the advantages of learning to protect oneself at a younger age. She'd capitulated once he'd gone over the safety aspects he'd planned to incorporate into the training. And you're not at all concerned that it came from a stranger who somehow gained access to her room. The gnocchi started to float. Diane scooped the first few out. I never said that. Nico dropped into Marine at work, and Diane felt a little better. When he went cold, he was feeling a lot. Believe me, if I ever meet the sender, I'm going to punch them in the face. Shoot them in a few non-fatal places, maybe. But I can respect what they were trying to do. They just went about it all wrong. Like Sana and this whole insane idea. At his glance to the door, she lowered her voice. She's too young. I agree. She's going to die before we do. Are you okay with that? No, I'm not. The suit will help, as will training. She's already one of the most powerful, potentially dangerous beings in the country without any extras. She could hardly believe he was saying such a thing. Staying out of super fights will help. Hiding the bots will help. The suit will encourage her to take risks. And she's a teenager! How dangerous can she possibly be? Extremely. The word was short, sharp, and severe. She has control over the disguises, but what happens when she learns constructs and gets angry, scared? She's already thrown a javelin at me by accident. What will she do if she hurts somebody? She needs exposure to dangerous situations so she won't panic. It stung that he had a point, except for one massive, glaring issue. Practice keeping calm under pressure does not equate to a teenager intentionally risking her life against crazy people orders of magnitude more powerful than she is. She can and should hide until she gets stronger. She won't hide if we're in danger. She's already come face to face with 2 villains and come out the other side. We can't stop this die. The only thing we can do is be there when it explodes. The last of the gnocchi was done. Diane dropped it in the bowl and drizzled the garlicky oil over the whole thing. Get the Parmesan, please, she asked Nico. Once he turned his back, she said, I can't agree with you. The sole reason I gave her permission to go today was to save your life. She went out in defiance of my orders to save yours. If we stay safe, do you think she'll stay put? Not a chance. Not now. On that somber note, they grabbed the food and headed to the table. Sana had already set it and was fiddling with the salt shaker. At their approach, she gave them a nervous smile and brushed past them to grab the garlic bread from the oven. Diane and Niccolo exchanged a look and set up the meal. The first few minutes of dinner passed in awkward silence. Sana was determinedly avoiding eye contact with either of them, and even Bread's typical dinner-time antics. Nobody had the heart to take him, or more rarely garlic, off the corner of the table when he was up there for the company, but he had a tendency to get bolder as meals wore on. Barely got a reaction. Diane finally bit the bullet. "You did well today. Thank you for doing as I asked." Sana's face twisted in confusion. "What did you ask me to do? Come back safe?" The light bulb went off. "Oh yeah, I tried. Could have done without the kidnapping, though." "No plan survives first contact with the enemy," Nico said. "But that's not so important right now. What you've learned from this is. So what have you learned?" Sana tapped her fork against her salad bowl. "Prince Snow is colorblind. I need to work on my situational awareness. Faye is a few gears short of a clock, and pulses to be avoided at all costs unless I want my brain exploded." She ticked them off on her free hand as she listed them. She perked up. "And Faye can't take the bots. Wouldn't even try." Diane repressed a surge of disappointment, then hated herself for feeling it at all. If the bots were gone, Sana would be safe. She'd looked into methods to temporarily stop her child's heart a while ago, but they all carried too much risk. Too many people would get involved. She couldn't figure out a way to make any work, not in a way that would make sure Sana came back to her. Faye had been a good idea, but Sana was so glad it had failed. Diane didn't know what to think. Nico picked up the conversation ball. "How was bot control?" "I figured out a new trick. Sorta. And no, this was bad. That was the enthusiasm Sana reserved for improving a glasswork technique. To see it applied to the bots, the things killing her, she didn't even realize she was in so deep. Tearing the bots away now might damage her irreparably. Damn it. Sana carried on, oblivious to Diane's revelation. "My impromptu flight and the associated crash landing should have done a lot more damage to me than it did, but I managed to slow myself down in midair. It's not remotely close to flight, but it's maybe a first step." "You want to fly," Nico observed mildly. Sana nodded. "More than constructs, more than anything else the bots could do. I can't explain why." Nico shrugged. "I met a flyer once while on tour. Guy spent most of his spare time in the air. Supposedly feels unlike anything else. Wouldn't surprise me if the potential is poking at you. Just let us know when you get the urge to start climbing things. We don't need a repeat of the toboggan incident." "Hey, I only broke one small bone. My foot had plenty to spare." "And one broken bone is one too many," Diane stated. "You should quit before the count increases." "I don't think I can." "Sounds like you learned something about yourself," Nico said, voice rich with approval. "Care to share?" Sonda tipped her head side to side. "Prince Snow and a guy I talked to after my eviction from the park said some things that got me thinking." Diane had a bad feeling about this. Sana carried on. "I know you're never going to be happy with Swarm's existence. If I can't have your blessing, I want your understanding." She speared a couple gnocchi. "I'm not going to stop. My benefactor, Prince Snow, Lord Static's death, they're all connected. Maybe from different directions, but they're all connected. The bots are the linchpin, and I'm the wrench in the works. It's the only arrangement that makes sense. Whatever's going down out there, I'm tangled up in it. I need to see it through." She chomped down viciously. "And after?" Diane asked. She had to. The answer had to be said, no matter how little she wanted to hear it. "I'll figure it out when it comes." "I'm not going to stop." The echo rang through Diane's head. "It's not your fault." "I know." She put down her fork. "Bad luck and good intentions can make for a mess, especially once supers are thrown into the mix. I'm doing the best I can, but I can do better, and I think you two can help me make that happen." She reached across the table to hold their hands. "Let me do this. Help me make things right." And in the face of a plea like that, what could Diane possibly say? End of Act 2.